The path to self-discipline. Miyamoto Musashi was one of the greatest samurais in history. Known for never losing a duel, with 61 consecutive victories, he was a master of the sword, but also a profound knower of the human mind and self-control. Even at the end of his life, he left teachings that have crossed centuries and still serve as a guide for those seeking a more disciplined and focused life. In this video, I will share some of Musashi's principles found in the work called Dokkodo, or The Way of Walking Alone, which was written shortly before his death. These principles teach us how to develop true self-discipline and how to apply it in our daily lives to become better and more fulfilled people. Accept everything just as it is. The first principle of Musashi says, accept everything just as it is. This may seem simple at first glance, but this idea carries a depth that can transform our way of seeing the world. Resistance to reality creates suffering and prevents us from dealing effectively with situations. When we insist on wishing things were different, we end up feeding frustration and sadness, which reduces our ability to take action. Imagine an everyday situation. You are stuck in traffic, late for an important appointment. The most common reaction would be to get irritated, frustrated, and think about all the negative consequences of being late. However, this attitude will not make the traffic disappear and will only increase your stress. By accepting the situation exactly as it is, you stop fighting against something that is out of your control and focus on what you can actually do to mitigate the impact. Perhaps call to inform about the delay, or use the time to listen to an educational podcast. Musashi invites us to abandon the illusion that we can control all circumstances. This is an invitation to peace and mental clarity. By accepting reality as it is, we create the ideal conditions to act more efficiently and achieve better results. Self-discipline is not about total control of the external world, but about how we deal with it. Do not seek pleasure for its own sake. The second principle warns us, do not seek pleasure for its own sake. In our current society, immediate pleasure is just a click away. Social media, processed foods, games, and videos that entertain us without requiring any effort are examples of instant pleasures that we often consume without thinking about the long-term consequences. Musashi understood that seeking pleasure merely for pleasure's sake can lead to addiction and an empty life. Think about how many times you ended up opting for something pleasurable that brought you no real benefit. Watching hours of videos or eating unhealthy foods may seem harmless, but when repeated constantly, they generate negative consequences for physical and mental health. Immediate pleasure makes us captive, creating a cycle of endless pursuit of gratification, while personal growth, which is usually associated with some degree of initial discomfort, is left aside. Musashi is not suggesting that we should not enjoy the good things in life, but rather that we should not place pleasure above all else. He proposes that we seek activities that challenge us and bring long-term pleasure. Instead of merely giving in to instant pleasures, we should choose to exercise, study, or engage in hobbies that require dedication and bring us growth. The pleasure that comes from these efforts is more lasting and meaningful. Do not, under any circumstances, depend on a partial feeling. The third principle says, do not, under any circumstances, depend on a partial feeling. All of us, at some point, feel doubts and uncertainties. Often, we make decisions based on fleeting or inaccurate feelings, which leads to undesirable results. Musashi warns us not to rely on an incomplete feeling or a hasty judgment. If you've ever caught yourself acting impulsively in an argument or making an impulse purchase, you know well how this can lead to regrets. A disciplined person does not act under pressure from momentary feelings. They wait until they have clarity and certainty before taking action. This means taking a step back, breathing, assessing the situation rationally, and then acting accordingly. This approach avoids unnecessary mistakes and allows actions to be more assertive and coherent. Discipline is in not acting impulsively and seeking a complete understanding before making a decision. Often the best thing we can do is wait and allow the initial emotion to calm down so we can see the situation more clearly. Think lightly of yourself and deeply of the world. Think lightly of yourself and deeply of the world is Musashi's fourth principle. We live in a time where self-knowledge is exalted and it is indeed important to know ourselves. However, it is possible to fall into a trap when we focus too much on our own thoughts and emotions. Overthinking about oneself can generate anxiety and paralyze our actions. Instead of becoming obsessed with our own feelings and flaws, Musashi suggests that we focus our attention on the world around us, on the actions we can take and the impacts we cause. The true understanding of who we are is not only within our mind, but also in the consequences of our attitudes and the way we affect the world around us. Imagine you are in a new job and are constantly thinking about whether you are good enough. This type of reflection can generate stress and, ultimately, harm your performance. Instead, if you focus on learning, on how you can contribute to the team, and on how your work positively affects others, you move away from a self-centered perspective and have a more significant impact. Thinking deeply about the world is a way to better connect with others and find our place in a larger context, rather than being isolated in our own worries. Remain detached from desire throughout your life. Musashi's fifth principle is, remain detached from desire throughout your life. Attachment is a source of suffering, as Buddha said. The problem is not in desiring something, but in excessive attachment to that desire. When we are attached, we end up suffering for what we do not yet have, or for the fear of losing what we have already achieved. Musashi teaches us that we should aspire to things, have goals, but without becoming slaves to these desires. Imagine you want to buy a house. Working hard to achieve this is commendable, but if this desire becomes an obsession, it becomes a source of suffering. You may become anxious, stop enjoying present moments, and even if you get the house, you will end up living in constant fear of losing what you have achieved. The idea here is to dedicate yourself, make plans, and work hard, but keep in mind that life is impermanent and material things come and go. Do not cling to the idea of success or failure, but rather to the experience and growth that the journey provides. Discipline is an understanding that the value of life is not in the goods we accumulate or the desires we fulfill, but in how we live each day and how we relate to what we desire. Conclusion: the journey of self-discipline. Musashi's principles are profound and timeless. They teach us to accept reality as it is, to avoid the endless pursuit of immediate pleasures, to not depend on incomplete feelings, to think more about the world and less about ourselves, and to detach from our desires. Discipline is the key to applying these teachings in our lives. It is not about achieving perfection, but about seeking the best path for personal growth and achieving our goals. By putting these principles into practice, we are not only becoming more disciplined, but also more resilient and more connected to the world around us. Remember that the path of self-discipline is a continuous process, and every small step taken in the right direction is already a victory. Now that you know the first 5 principles of Dokkodo, I invite you to reflect. Which of them can you start applying in your life today? Share in the comments how you intend to use these teachings in your daily life. I would love to hear your experiences, and I believe they can inspire many others. And of course, if you enjoyed this video and want more content about self-discipline, philosophy, and personal growth, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave your like. It really helps our work and motivates us to bring more reflections to you. See you next time.